The latest job numbers ahead of the Labor Day holiday show the state's unemployment is still relatively low, but it has been rising slowly over the past year. The jobless rate in California stands at 5.2% as of last month. That's according to the Labor Department. This time last year, it was 4.6%. Meanwhile, the Bay Area tech sector continues to see layoffs. San Jose-based Cisco recently announced another round, cutting thousands of jobs. The company says it's shifting its focus to artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Meantime, the U.S. Labor Department says employers actually added fewer jobs over the past year than initially reported. The original figure was 2.9 million jobs. The revised number was 2.1 million. Now, it's not unusual for the federal government to adjust those numbers, but this is a bigger revision than we've normally seen. Despite that, though, the U.S. did add a total of 14 million jobs during President Biden's first 3 years in office. Former President Trump saw a net loss during his term through the course of the pandemic, though the course of the pandemic had a lot to do with that, worth noting there. Joining me now is former EDD Director Michael Bernick. Thank you so much for being with us on this Friday.
You, Liz.
So what impact do you think this election could have on the job market? And would it even make a difference in the market if Trump or Harris was elected?
Well, I think one important point is that both during the Trump years, the times prior to the pandemic, and the years post-pandemic, 2022, unemployment has been very low. So during the Trump years, unemployment from early 2017 on until the pandemic, of course, hovered around 4%, went even below 4%. Very low by historic standards, very strong labor market. That changed, of course, in March of 2020
Right.
with the pandemic. But numbers generally were very low. And in the Biden administration, since in the post-pandemic period, 2022 on, numbers have been very low. Again, 4% or during many of the months below that. So the employment was strong in both administrations, except for during the pandemic time. In terms of what they're saying now, Vice President Harris has talked about price control. She's talked about housing investment. In terms of a specific job strategy, she hasn't really put out specifics. We can imagine that there be a continuation of this emphasis on fiscal policy, the Infrastructure Reduction Act, all that money that went into the economy, particularly for infrastructure. The CHIPS Act, in terms of so-called industrial policy, a strong emphasis on fiscal policy, in contrast to President Trump's approach, much more market-based.
Well, it's worth noting now that the state's unemployment rate is still relatively low at 5.2%, but it has been slowly ticking up. Do you think that trend is going to continue into the new year?
I think it will. We've seen it tick up, as you pointed out earlier, from 4.6% a year ago to now 5.2%. It's the second highest among all states in the nation. And we've seen a slowdown in terms of job growth, particularly in terms of job growth in private sector industries. The main job growth we've seen in California over the past year has been directly in government or in government-related spending, particularly healthcare.
And we know the tech sector has always been a really volatile industry. It's boom and bust, but it feels like layoffs often come in waves. But so far, this wave seems to only be getting bigger and bigger. It's not breaking yet. Does it show signs of calming down as we get closer to the end of the year, do you think?
Well, Liz, you're right on both points. The tech sector has always been volatile. Good times, bad times, always job creation and destruction. What's unusual the past couple months is that there was expectation that after the huge tech hiring in 2022 and early 2023, we had layoffs in late 2023 and the first part of this year, that the layoffs would stop. They haven't stopped. We saw just the past couple of weeks, particularly here in the Bay Area, Cisco, Intel, both major layoffs. Even Apple never lays off people, announced layoffs. Now they were minimal, about 100 earlier this week. So yes, it is surprising that the tech layoffs, which were expected to basically slow down, have continued apace.
We talk a lot about job losses, job gains, but what about the slowdown of wage gains and hours worked for many employees? What's driving this new trend?
Very important point. And in fact, the wage gain issue is even more important to, frankly, most of California workers than the unemployment numbers. Wage gains have slowed in the past 6 months. We saw very strong wage gains in the 2021, 2022, which were very positive here in California, particularly among lowest wage workers. That slowed. And over the past year, wages, real weekly earnings have actually only increased by 0.4%. So wage gains have slowed. I think that's in some ways more alarming than the unemployment numbers.
Sure. All right, Michael Bernick, with the former director of the EDD. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
Always fun to be with you.
Thanks so much for watching. To view more content like this, we've selected some videos we think you'll enjoy. So please be sure to hit like and then click the link in the left-hand bottom corner to subscribe.